In other news worth your attention this Monday morning, the South African Human Rights Commission will be convening an inquiry into the impact of load reduction on human rights. The gathering will be investigative in nature and comes amid growing concerns and complaints received from a number of ratepayers. These concerns have also been raised about the impact of load reduction on human rights broadly, particularly the right to life, equality and human dignity, as well as the right to access basic education and healthcare services. Watching developments for us is our reporter Refilwe Mekwa, who joins us now live. And Refilwe, it's an interesting development, of course, coming off the back of stage 3 load shedding being implemented at the weekend. The obvious question many people will be asking is around the terms of reference for a gathering like this.
I totally agree, Ayanda, and today is the first day of the 3-day hearing. We're expected to actually hear the South African Human Rights Commission listening to various concerns from different stakeholders, including government and residents, whereby, with this inquiry, how it came about, they received concerns from a particular demography, whereby specifically poor communities and also disadvantaged backgrounds, whereby they were complaining about that while the entire country wasn't experiencing load shedding before Friday, of course, they instead were still experiencing, in fact, seeing the rise of load reduction. But with me is the Commissioner of the South African Human Rights Commission, Professor Tsepo Madlingosi, just to tell us about the inquiry and what it entails and how it came about. Prof.
Good morning, Refilwe, and to your listeners. Well, this national investigative inquiry into the impact of load reduction on human rights came as a result of complaints that we received from numerous communities all across the country. The complaints is to the effect that load reduction is disproportionately affecting poor and vulnerable communities. The complaint is that load shedding amounts to collective punishment, and that therefore it violates several human rights: the right to dignity, the right to equality, the right to life, and so forth. So we decided to take a strategic decision to institute a national inquiry. We made a call for submissions last year and we received lots of submissions, including from affected persons, communities, the Minister of Electricity, ESCOM, NESA, and several departments. So as we said, today is the day 1 of this national inquiry. We have set aside 3 days to hear oral submissions. Of course, we are still accepting written submissions. After the 3 days, we will look at the submissions, assess, number 1, what are the practical and legal implication of load reduction on human rights, understand the causes of load reduction from NESA, from ESCOM, from the Ministry of Electricity, understand which communities are disproportionately affected, and thereby afterwards give some recommendations to mitigate the impact of load reduction.
What kind of concerns did the Commission receive?
So, as I said, the first set of submissions wanted to understand, what is the cause of those load reduction, distinguished from load shedding. That while, the whole country has got a reprieve from load shedding, which I must pause to salute the Minister of Electricity as well as ESCOM, that poor and vulnerable communities continue to experience load reduction. They consider this a indirect racism. They allege that it is administratively unjust. It amounts to collective punishment, and there is no transparency around this. Therefore, they allege that this violates a number of their human rights.
And once the inquiry is done, where to?
So after the inquiry is done, we will assess all the submissions, both oral and written submissions. We will look at the Constitution, relevant laws, as well as international laws, and come to the conclusion whether the way load reduction is currently implemented, whether it violates human rights, as well as to make, recommendations for reform.
Thank you so much. That was Professor Tsepo Madlingosi, the Commissioner of the Human Rights Commission, just explaining to us how this inquiry of the National Investigative will unfold. We do know that, or rather we are expecting ESCOM and also the Electricity Minister, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, to give also presentations on the last day of this inquiry. Ayanda?
Right, Refilwe Miko, live to us there from Sandton in Johannesburg for now. Thanks very much indeed. It'll be interesting to see, of course, what comes of this inquiry. It reminds me of when ESCOM was taken to court over implementing load shedding at schools, hospitals, and several other institutions that are seen to be providing essential services. At the time, even then, the court had to balance issues to do with rights contained in the Constitution and ESCOM's imperatives around ensuring there isn't a collapse of the grid. We'll see how all of this unfolds, of course, in the next 3 days.